for those like Wall Street Journal, small outlets, big outlets, everything in between, and you having come from media training, having been a journalist and been in front of a camera, if you can talk to, and I'm not just saying Aaron or Wall Street Journal in particular, but just kind of the enterprise about abuse, about Christchurch, about Doug Wilson, how, from your perspective, they should be approaching these kinds of stories, or approaching Doug, or approaching Christian nationalism, or approaching like kind of the whole we get contacted, and just back up, we get contacted about Christian nationalism. People only want to talk about Christian nationalism, and just the headline of this crazy pastor and Christian nationalism, and he's in Trump's hands, which is true, but it's like there's more beyond that. So I'm curious from your side, having been through this and media trained and having talked to Wall Street, what would you tell those who are listening, especially from the media side, like, hey, maybe start asking these questions, or maybe start pursuing these angles? What would you say to those like Wall Street or anybody else like them?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think first, there's no such thing as a perfect victim survivor. Like, I'm not going to have dealt with it perfectly, and there's many places where, like, older and wiser, I'm like, man, why didn't younger Emily do that? Like, why did I delete the text messages when Nance told me to delete the text messages? Why was I hiding it? Why was I protecting him? And the criticism of myself, I think it's helpful for people that are approaching the story to understand that there is a lot of nuance, and that particularly when trauma is involved, survivors make really terrible witnesses. And because of trauma, because of the way it affects us, and the fear and how deeply seated that is. And so acknowledging that it's not clean in the way that I think a lot of stories are. And then second, that this is kind of the end result of this theology and this worldview that does put men so much at the center, and which treats women as less than human in many ways. I think the comments that Wilson made about women being the kind of people that people come from, when you view women as being less than human, as not being fully their own autonomous human beings, then crimes against women and girls are less bad. Like, it's not as they're not taking it as seriously. They view the greater crime to be me destroying a man's career, or me calling out and demanding scrutiny of their mission, which makes it very inconvenient for them. And they view the ends as absolving them of all of the means and all of the collateral damage that happens as a result of that theology. I also think it's important to note that I don't think that the only crime and the only problem is the fact that Wilson's covered up the abuse. I think that this worldview and this training that is instilled on young girls from a very young age, it creates the abuse. It prepares. They're offering up these victims to be abused. When you're told you're going to need to submit to your husband, and you end up in a marriage where your husband is beating you. Like, this has happened in Christchurch. There's many women that have gone through this. And of course, because that's what they're told. They're told that they need to submit. When young girls are told that if their hemline on their skirt is too short, they're causing their Christian brothers to stumble. They're absolving the young men of any sort of responsibility to treat women with respect, and instead putting all of the onus on these young girls. And so when a young girl is assaulted, she thinks it's her fault, and she's scared, and she doesn't come forward, and she doesn't approach in the way that would be ideal and would be in her best interest. Because of that teaching. So I think it's important to understand that it's not just what happened after, but it's what's led up to this, and that this theology creates abuse.